This is a fan-generated show. If you'd like to support us, please go to jamieglazov.com. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our new Rumble channel. All your support is greatly appreciated.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm thrilled to announce the release of my new book, Obama's True Legacy: How He Transformed America. There's a reason why Mike Huckabee calls it a ferocious and chilling read. Order it now at Amazon.com or at FrontPageMag.com. Thank you, and may God bless you. Good evening. Welcome to the Glazov Gang. Tonight we have a very special program. What an honor and privilege it is to introduce Chef Tony Hyde. He is the author of the new book, The Day Racism Walked in My Door. He is also the owner and illustrious chef of Sat Down Jamaican Restaurant, which can be found at 11320 Ventura Boulevard in Studio City, California. The area code is 91604. The best Jamaican food on the planet. Tony Hyde, what an honor to have you on the program.
Thank you. The pleasure is mine.
Tony, did I introduce you properly? Would you like to maybe say a couple extra things, or did it suffice?
No, it's fine. You know, Chef Tony Hyde is fine. Tony Hyde is fine. I am very honored to do what I do. So generally when someone greet me as Chef Tony Hyde, I feel very honored because I know I've earned that compliment or that title. So that's fine.
Thank you, Tony. Well, I've read your book, and it was heart-wrenching. It was heartwarming in some places, and in many places it was an on-the-edge-of-your-seat thriller. Also quite a book of faith, and there's a lot to say here. I think the best way to start, because we're going to go back to the beginning of your life. This is quite a story. But before we do, let's just begin with you telling us why you wrote this book.
Wow. You know, sometimes you are sitting on the edge. It's like you're either going to jump or you're going to turn back. Okay? So me sitting on the edge for many years, I had to jump. I had to do this story to clear my conscience, to show people how my belief in God has basically pulled me through this thing. Because if I didn't have a strong belief in God, I would not have made this thing out, you know, the way I am right now. Chances are it could have gone the opposite direction. But because I knew my belief in God, I had to write the book and just let people know my story.
Well, thank you, Tony. And so our audience should know at this moment that something horrible happens at one point, followed by quite a bit of horror. But let's begin at the beginning, and a story of the beginning. A lot of it is happiness and peace and excitement. So it's incredible how life works. So let's begin, Tony. You were born in Jamaica, and just tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I was born in Jamaica, and the things that I genuinely remember about being a kid in Jamaica, it was so much fun. Because my father was a dentist, so my mother never really worked, and we had someone to take care of us. So we always run around and just have fun. And there was a time where my mother decided to migrate to the US. So she actually took us down to the country where my grandmother is, and we stayed there for a little while. And the fun thing is we would climb trees. We would run around outside throwing rocks at each other. This is before, you know, modern technology, telephones and all these things. So we would actually, between me and my brother, we would put two cans together and put a string between these cans and try to speak to each other before we even knew of, telephone in this capacity. I mean, they had telephones at that time. They had lighting. It's not like it was the dark ages, but it was still a lot of fun. Going to the beach Sunday morning, with my father, we would load up in the car, drive to the ocean, and we would be at the beach for many hours, swimming, splashing around, playing on the sand. You would see kids running around on the sand, playing naked, swimming in the water. And these were kids that was, young, carefree kids and just having fun. Most of the time, my father would go swimming out in the ocean so far. We can't see him, but we never paid attention because we was only enjoying, each other and enjoying everybody else that's there.
Tony, in one part where you describe your upbringing there, and you just mentioned it, I was my eyebrows went up a little bit because, we were a little bit rough growing up myself. But you guys were you write in the book you would throw rocks at each other, and then if you struck one another, you'd run over, make sure the person was okay. You deal with it, then you'd go back, and then you would continue throwing the rocks at one another. This was a very interesting game. Tony, you were very close to your grandmother, and you became a great chef. And I have to tell the audience the secret now has to come out that I am addicted to the oxtail, curry goat, and curry chicken at Tony's restaurant. But absolutely delicious food. But Tony, your talent and your amazing, just gift as a chef of making all of this food, your profession, everything, I think it would be fair to say that it's rooted in what your grandmom was teaching you, right?
My grandmother, yes. My grandmother was the influencer, because I used to be dragged around, and I don't want it to sound so bad because I was happy to go along with her, when she's making cakes for different places or cooking for different places, whether it's getting fish from the ocean and frying fish, I would be happy to go along with her. So whenever she's in the kitchen cooking, I was always there. Whenever she's rubbing the sugar and the butter to start baking the cake, I would be the one, little guy, rubbing the sugar and the butter. And my reward was I would get the container after she take all the mix out and put it in the oven to bake. Then I would wind up sitting there licking the pan with the leftover remnants of the butter and sugar and the cake.
Tony, what is one thing your grandma taught you in terms of the importance of being a good chef and cook?
Wow, that's a great question. My grandmother always teach me to make sure everything is the best of my ability. So every time I'm in the kitchen cooking, she's always saying to me, make sure that the flavor is correct. Make sure that the seasoning, make sure the thing smells great. So this way, anyone that eats it is going to enjoy it.
And you can't be lazy, and you have to be patient.
Absolutely.
And you have to care about the people that are going to eat the food.
Yes.
Tony, we're going to have to bring you back for a 5-hour show to get into all these details. But for the purposes of our show tonight, we've got to speed up a little bit, okay? So then people will have to read the book, but because of certain circumstances, you flew to America and you were imagining that you were flying to a paradise. You were very excited, and you had landed in New York. And there's quite a wonderful picture of a very handsome young 15-year-old Tony Hyde in your book. And that's 1 year after you had arrived in Brooklyn. This is... Oh, excuse me. I apologize. In the Bronx. And this is roughly 1973-74, right?
Yes.
Okay, so you arrive in America. Tell us a little bit about how exciting it was to come to America and your road towards the dreams of what you wanted to become and how you did that.
Coming to America, I think I was just so overwhelmed because one of the things I always heard when I was in Jamaica is that the roads is paved with gold, So I came with that understanding that I'm going to see that. But even when I came and it wasn't there, I was so excited. I remember getting off the plane in JFK and it was extremely cold. My mother had brought jackets for all of us. And it was 7 of us travel at that time, 7 kids and my mother. And we were all dressed, in these jackets and just trying our best to avoid the cold. Then, my cousin, he came to the airport to pick us up in a Mercury Cougar back in those days, 1972 Mercury Cougar, something like that. And we all piled in, driving across like the Whitestone Bridge from the airport. Man, my face was glued to the window just looking outside, seeing the bridge, seeing all the lights. All the excitement was just something that is etched in my mind. I can never forget it. So I was so happy, even though I didn't see gold, but to me, everything else was diamonds and platinum. Everything was amazing.
It resonates with me very much, even though we have different narratives. But I arrived in the U.S. in New York when I was 5.5. Parents had escaped Soviet Union, but my mom told me that my jaw was just hanging wide open. Look at the McDonald's, at the toys, and everything. And so you felt that you had arrived in paradise. And let's speed this up a little bit. So kind of a joyous childhood, joyous youth, coming to the United States and ending up in Florida, close to West Palm Beach. Tell us, and you had begun to pursue your talents as a chef, but it wasn't such a great neighborhood, and so you begin to start a business, chef, etc. Not such a great neighborhood, and a little bit of trouble begins to brew. Correct?
That is correct. Yeah.
But go ahead, tell us a little bit.
So, basically after I was able to open the restaurant, I ran into a little snag before I had a chance to open the restaurant because I ran into a finance issue where I was short about $5,000 to complete the business. So, however, I was able to get that money from the bank, but it wasn't an easy transition. Anyway, fast forward a little bit, I was able to get the restaurant open.
But wait a second. There was a little bit of something there which was a little bit of something foretelling which would happen down the line. In the book, you write about it. Tell us your experience, and you were a little bit shocked at how you were greeted at the bank and what you understood about what had happened.
Okay, so basically, I was short about $5,000, and I applied for a loan over the phone with the local bank that I was doing business with, that I had just established a relationship with. And they approved it, $5,000. So when I went into the bank to pick up the check, I spoke to the manager. I said, my name is Mr. Hyde. I came to pick up a check. And her response to me initially was, "You're Mr. Hyde." And I said, "Yes." And, I said, "I'm here to pick up the check to be able to finish my project." And she asked me the same question again. Again, I said to her, "Yes, I'm Mr. Hyde." At that point, she said, "Well, we couldn't just give you the money just like that. You would need some kind of collateral." I said to her, "Okay, I have a vehicle that was 2 years old that was paid off. It was a Suzuki Samurai. They were very reasonable price back then, but it was holding the value." I was able to go home, retrieve the title, return and give it to her. So once I gave it to her, then she gave me the loan for $5,000, and I was able to complete my business. After that, I was able to return the money back to them in 4 months and close my account. I never did business with them again. So that was a snag.
Well, you're being a gentleman, uh, but what was the issue that you had learned at that moment?
At that moment, I realized that I was chocolate and not necessarily vanilla. So the color of
Okay.
my skin played a major role.
Okay. It's not the best neighborhood. Very, very heartwarming chapters in there the audience has to read. And Tony is also giving food and loves to feed people, etc. But it's not the best neighborhood. And please share the first frightening experience you had with the individual that tried to rob you.
Wow. Well, that was definitely one of the most frightening experience because I usually go to the restaurant every Sunday to prepare for Monday and, just marinate the meat and so on. So normally every Sunday I go there, I would always leave the gun inside the car. This Sunday, my guardian angel told me, without necessarily verbally telling me, put the gun in my pocket. So I was able to put the 357 in my pocket, and I was wearing a shorts at that point, shorts and a t-shirt. I put the gun in my pocket, pushed it all the way in, went inside the restaurant, prepared what I had to do, and maybe 2 hours later, while I was getting ready to come out, a friend of mine pulled up, and he asked me if I could buy a beer so him and I could stand there and talk. So I walk across to the grocery store that was right adjacent next to me. And as I was going inside, I noticed there was a guy standing outside. So I say hi. And I went inside, purchased 2 bottles of Guinness Stout. So as I was walking back out, all of a sudden I heard gunshot. And this person is telling me to lay down. To this day, I don't know how it happened, but I promise you, I was able to put both beers in one hand, pull the gun from my pocket, and turn around and fire a shot at this person. And this ultimately allowed me enough time to run behind the car. And as soon as I got behind the car, he fired 2 more shots at me, you know? And I was able to stand up and fire 1 more shot. And then he took off running across the parking lot. After that, I ran to another grocery store down the street and I asked to call the police. So as soon as I got in there, I had the gun in my hand. So they thought I was coming to rob them. So of course they pulled the bulletproof glass down. So once I explained to them that I was Tony, the owner for the restaurant, and I asked them just to call the police, they was able to call the police. And one of the first person that came to the scene was an officer that normally come and have lunch there. So, he took over the investigation, and probably about 2, 3 weeks later, they was able to find the person that did this. But lucky thing is, I only got a graze on my left arm. And then my friend got a bullet, went through his sleeve, but it never touched him.
If you had not brought your gun with you that day, and you usually do not, what are the chances of what would have happened?
I'm sure the chances of me getting shot would have increased 1,000,000%. Who knows? I probably would not be speaking at this point.
Thank you, Tony. Now, the reason I bring this up as well, also for the audience to understand, is what we're going to get into here. There are so many occurrences and circumstances and events in Tony's life, which just after a while they begin to appear miraculous despite the horrifying stuff that's happening. So it's one of the reasons I'm bringing this up, but we're moving towards something. But in general, there's an atmosphere of danger that begins to build. And for instance, after that, you would be in your restaurant and there was some, let's just say, not particularly angelic people were sitting in their car outside one night waiting for you, and you took your gun and you held it up and you were showing it to them. This was the atmosphere, right?
Right. Because, you know, it's weird enough, the street that my restaurant was on the right, it was really an extremely rough area. And probably two streets over, it was nice, decent, manicured lawns. And that was the environment. You know, so these guys figure, you know, when I'm gonna close, they're gonna come there and maybe try to rob me. So I had to make sure that they know that I was armed, that I was not afraid to use it.
Okay, so overall, there's this danger, bad neighborhood, but if people would read the book, and Tony's explaining, he loves cooking. His grandmother has taught him these things, and he loves. And Tony, I love how you explain and put in detail how much you loved feeding people, and also often giving food to those who could not afford to eat, even though in one case that you described they weren't so nice in return, but that was another show. So you're happy, you're building a business, you like to be a chef, and one day you're also a man of many talents. You were painting a picture,
Yes.
and for some reason you painted some darkness in the background, and you weren't sure why you did it, but then later when you looked back, you began to think there was a reason that you painted that darkness in the picture. Tell us about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I was trying to paint a happy picture, but for some reason to the left of the picture, it was just a lot of really black dark cloud that was brewing, and the way I painted it, it was becoming bigger and bigger. But I didn't understand the reason, because it's supposed to be a happy picture, it's supposed to be a happy painting. So of course later on I realized, okay, this was what was coming, the darkness that was coming. And I contributed to maybe my subconscious mind was telling me something, but I wasn't paying attention, you know?
That's fascinating how these things work. So you get up one morning and you start driving to work, and you see a person with a mask in the rearview mirror behind you.
Yeah.
So some weird stuff is happening, right?
You're right.
All right, so just take it from there and what ended up happening during this day that changed your life.
Well, yeah, definitely. As I walked down, from the hallway, I could hear just an echo. But again, I'm not paying attention. Got in my car, got out to the flow of traffic, and I noticed this guy. He's wearing like a big gas mask. And it's not just a little gas mask you put on over your nose, it's a complete face mask with a big goggles in the front, and the two breathing holes on the side. And I'm saying this is kind of weird, because it was a beautiful day, not too sunny, not too hot, and there was no reason for this. But I'm looking at it and saying, this is strange. So of course I passed him, and by the time I got to the next traffic light, he was there. Eventually I left. I moved on. I went to pick up whatever I had to pick up, and then got to my restaurant. Got to the restaurant maybe at 9:30, and by the time I got into the kitchen, got everything done, I was cutting some plantains. So probably about 10:30. One of the waiters that was setting up the front of the restaurant, he came to the kitchen and said to me, there's some guys knocking on the front door. So, he said they was wearing green. I said, okay, well, open the door. It's probably the sheriff department, because a lot of the sheriffs used to come to eat, because I had so much love for sheriffs in West Palm Beach. I had so much love for West Palm Beach Police Department, Riviera Beach. So everyone knew me, and everyone I welcome into my restaurant. There was times when maybe 12, 15 officers would be in there eating. All of a sudden they would get a call. Everybody would, strap up on and get going. So it wasn't unusual. So as soon as they opened the door, I could hear these guys was yelling my name. I was in the kitchen cutting some plantains, and I didn't realize I had a knife in my hand. I heard someone yelling my name. So I walked through the door, the kitchen door. And as soon as I exit the kitchen door, I encountered guns in my face. He's got a knife. Drop the knife. Of course, I complied right away. I dropped the knife. I was placed in handcuffs and sat on a chair while these guys just ransacked the restaurant, looking through everything that they could find to look through. Eventually, my gun that was my protection, they found it, and this was a legal gun that I purchased. Nothing was illegal about it. And of course, they confiscated the gun. And, after that, I was placed in their car. They also took the keys to my BMW outside, went outside and practically destroyed the interior of the car. After that, I was driven to my place where I lived. And what they did, they used the keys that they had taken from me, unlocked my door, because three of them ran upstairs and one sat in the car with me, in the pickup with me. So they unlocked the door and then rang the bell. So after they rang the bell, the young lady was my girlfriend at that time. She was inside. She came to look through the peephole to see who it was. So the minute she got there, they dragged the door open and pulled her outside, and she was just wearing her underwear. From that, they ran inside, searching my apartment with my little son inside. So it was a nightmare from that morning when I saw the guy with the mask on his face.
And it might not, looking back, it might not have been connected technically, but it was maybe connected somewhere spiritually, right?
Yes, yes. Because I always believe in keeping your head high to see what the universe is telling you. A lot of times we don't look around, we don't look up, we look straight ahead. So we never see what the universe is trying to tell us, what our guardian angel is showing us.
And Tony, this theme constantly comes up in your book, and we will be returning to it because you are a man of love, and you keep repeating that hate has no color, and you hold on to love of all races, and you did not allow this experience to stop you from loving. And you also describe being treated with love by all races, including white people. But let us just be honest at this stage here for now, that these particular police officers, if I'm correct, there were four of them. They were white. And what was the language they were using with you during this arrest?
Well, the language that they used was extremely racist verbiage.
This is in the mid. This is in the already in the 80s, right?
Yes, this was in the 90s.
Oh no, yeah, in the 90s already. Okay, yeah, we went ahead in time. Yeah,
98.
right. Okay.
So I was then described as the N-word in no uncertain term. I was now effing Jamaican, effing criminal, effing every single thing. At one point, I said to the guys, "What have I done to you? I have no idea who you are. Why are you being disrespectful to me? I have no idea who you are. I've never seen you before, But still."
And this was a shock to you.
Yeah.
Okay, so Tony, tell us, and I hate to rush you because these are crucial moments, but we have to get to a few things. So tell us, what were you accused of? Why did they do this? But then you found out really what had sparked it.
Well, initially, I had no idea what happened. But I remember when I was inside of the jail cell, one of them came and he laughed at me and he said, "You know why you're here, right?" I said, I have no clue. What's going on?" He said, "Well, basically, you cut the boss off in traffic, so he came to get your ass." So it was from a minor traffic infraction that led to this. And I remember when this happened, at that point, I had flashbacks because I remember I was driving on the freeway and realized I was about to pass my exit. So I put my signal on. I remember that clearly. And I exited. But as I was exiting, there was a green truck behind me. So once I was exiting off the freeway, I noticed that these guys were looking, bending their head in a certain position to look. And I guess at that point, they were looking at my license plate. So probably about 2 days after I got to the restaurant, I would always see a green truck parked in the corner, but I didn't pay attention. Again, I had no idea. Only after about maybe 3, 4 days, I realized this doesn't look right because it's the same vehicle over and over and over. And then probably a week or week and a half later, this is when the incident happened.
So you had cut this individual off in traffic who had some power and authority, and he decided to punish you for it.
Yes.
And the way that they did that was to try to pin on you that you were not in the United States legitimately, and the effort to deport you began.
Correct.
So you are put into a detention center.
Yes.
And this begins.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Even at that point, while I'm put in the detention center, my restaurant that I had built for so many years, I had to tell, my girlfriend, just close it up and walk away from it because nobody was there to take care of the business. So I lost the restaurant that I had created for so long. And then being in the detention center, this was 11 and a half months of, from one jail to the other. I think it's probably an ultimate of maybe 7 or 8 different jail cells from time to time. And this took 11 and a half months, like I say. But while I'm in there, I remember getting transferred to a jail in Key West, Florida. And at that point, when I got there, they were handing out some brochures to say, if you were ever treated unfairly, what I would like you guys to do is fill this out, hand it back to us, and we will mail it to the Justice Department. So what I did, I filled it out, but I decided to mail it to my mother's house because I didn't trust the individual that was there. And of course, not because they may not be a good person. I just think at that point I've been through so much, I have no trust in them. So I sent it to my mother and asked her to mail it to the Justice Department. And this is what ultimately led to me getting out of there. But it was 11 and a half months of unbelievable craziness.
Now, how were they able to do this? Because it just sounds like a nightmare. What were some of the technicalities and instruments that they were able to use? What excuses did they use? What did they find out about you that they were able to manipulate, that they were able to do this to you?
Well, they claimed that I was selling weed. And at that point, I had a $25 weed charge. And, it was back in those days was a little bag of weed that was a misdemeanor, So I had 3 of those. And this is what they use as technicality to say at this point, I am now an aggravated felon and I should not be in this country.
Tony, when all of this was happening, you also began to remember a certain green truck that had been parked outside your restaurant for some time, and you realized that they had been watching you all that time, collecting information after you had cut the boss off in traffic, right?
Yes. So realizing that was the same person that ultimately came to do, you know, his revenge on me.
When they had also arrested you and put you in the detention center, etc., they had also returned to your, not just to your restaurant, but to your home to harass your family and also perhaps try to take some stuff, or they were damaging your house. What did they do while you were in jail?
Well, the following day, after they had went there before, the following day, they actually went back and rang the bell. But at this point, they didn't have the keys. So they rang the bell, and my girlfriend at that point, she came and she looked through the peek hole and realized that they were there, and she just kept quiet, so they were going back there to see whatever else they could find. And these are guys that was so unfair, because I actually spoke to other people that was in the detention center.
Like the Haitians there.
Yeah, yeah. And they would tell me stories about these guys. So
Mm-hmm.
Haitians that was in there, it was, I felt so bad for some of these guys. As a matter of fact, there was a,
What the police would do is go back to the house and rob it, right?
yes.
Now I want to interrupt here just for a second, just in terms of maybe some of the audience thinking that we're trying to do something here. So, Tony and I have had long conversations. He talks about a lot of this in his book, how love is always replaced with hate, replaces any kind of potential for hatred. That, Tony, you talk, like, even right now on your Instagram page, there's photographs of police officers holding your book. You talk about how, and also you explain here how there were many good people in authority, how there were also many good police officers. And we can talk about this, how, yes, this happened in America. Yes, there were some bad people there that did these awful things to you. But at the same time, that the system was able to correct itself.
That is correct. Yes.
And that there were beautiful, and I want to get to this, that there were wonderful white people that ended up helping you. And that the discussion really can lead to the fact that, you write about that there is no one location for evil. So we can't really say that, evil exists everywhere else, but not in the United. There's evil people everywhere. And there's good people everywhere. And so we're not necessarily demonizing any institution or all police officers, but we're telling an honest story about what happened to Tony. And you have some very beautiful words at the end of love and of a love of all people. So we want to get to that, but I just want to put that out there because sometimes audiences jump to conclusions right away, etc. So, but this is a story of bad people that did something to you. So, but Tony, you write about how okay, so there's a lot to say to say here. But let's just focus here for a second on, while you were in the detention center and in the other places, it was very crazy in there. You dealt with a lot. One thing, you were very careful with what you ate and drank while you were there, right?
Correct.
Just being very careful. And now you call these four individuals the four devil sons.
Yes.
They were in very high positions, and you heard some things about them from other people, but they enjoyed ruining people's lives.
Absolutely. They do get a thrill out of doing it. And, unfortunately, like I said, there is great people in the police department. There is a few bad apples, but there's great people, in all, whether it's the Justice Department, because like I said, even the young lady that came to interviewed me from the Justice Department, she was white. She was very sympathetic to what was going on. And she made sure she did her best to get some resolution as soon as possible, you know?
And so that's a real turning point in your book there, that there was, were, no, I don't want to say you were losing hope, because you're a man of faith and you always believed, but things were getting rough, and things were looking bad. And a judge had made a decision to have you deported back to Jamaica. You have to stay at the detention center. Your restaurant business is ruined. And and as you write, yes, these 4 white police officers that did this, and yet this lovely white lady comes from the DOJ, and it was the first time that you saw a look of sympathy and understanding on a certain person's face in authority, and that's where it was a turning point in your life. You realized there was hope that day, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That point, I realized that the doors are going to open, because when you're able to relay your story and they can see the truth that you're telling, and not necessarily believe what has been written, then at that point you realize, okay, there is a possibility. And I held on to that hope. I held on to that possibility. And that's what led me through, got me through it.
Tony, you say in the book, there's a lot of eyebrow-raising stuff in there that moves me very much. You write about how you would pray and you would ask the Lord for guidance.
Yes.
And within a few days of that prayer, you would get a dream, and an answer to your request was in the dream. And this didn't just happen once. You're saying that this happened regularly at that time and also happens regularly in your life. You pray and ask God for something, and within a few days, you get an answer in one of your dreams.
The manifestation will always come through, or it'll come. If it comes very vague, then I know it's something that's not going to be possible. But if it becomes very clear and is very blatant in my face, then I know I have to just hold on, because it's coming. So while I was there were so many instances. I could speak about something that I said I wouldn't speak about, but I think it's a little bit relevant at this point. You know, there was a guy that was there, and he had served quite a bit of time in prison. And he was there with me, you know, from one jail cell to the other, because he was going to be deported back to Jamaica. So I was sleeping one morning, and I jump up out of my sleep because I saw 2 guys coming to pick him up. And I got up out of my sleep and I went to tell him that they are on their way to pick you up. And within probably 2 or 3 hours, sure enough, 2 guys came in and took him. So once I told him this, he said, okay, let me get my things together. Let me organize my things. Because he believed at that point what I said was true. And at this point, he got his things organized, whatever little legal papers he had. And within, 2 or 3 hours, like I said, sure enough, they came and they picked him up and they deported him. So there was so many dreams that I had there that was extremely vivid and extremely clear that came to pass.
Tony, it's very moving. You write, your life as a chef and feeder of people never left you. And even in the beginning, when they had first arrested you and thrown you in the detention center, you very movingly write in the book about how you're laying there, but most of your worries are whether they're going to marinate the chicken and the curry duck long enough back at the restaurant. And if only you knew what was ahead. And then we go many months into the future while you're in the detention center. If I'm correct with my memory, your mom and sister had sent you some food.
Yes.
And you had so much joy making small pieces of fish and crackers and feeding a lot of the prisoners. And you shared that you thought of Jesus at that time. in terms of how Jesus fed the multitude with fish and bread, and your love of Christ, and how you wanted to follow in his example, and you felt a beautiful warm feeling in your heart to feed people in the jail, the way you were feeding people in your restaurant.
Absolutely. Because my mother had, when I spoke to her, she told me she was going to buy some fish to fry the fish. Now in Jamaica, we have a fish. What we do, fry it, and then we use a vinegar sauce that we call a escovitch sauce. So you fry the fish, and then you make this vinegar sauce with lots of vinegar and pepper and lemon, and pour it over the fish. And it'll actually keep the fish good for 3 days or so. In the refrigerator, it could sit there for about a week or 2 weeks, and it's going to be fine. So, I spoke to one of the guards there was a lot of Cuban guards there. Very nice people. Very nice. There was a guy there. His name was Cowboy. I called him RoboCop in the book. But this guy was a gem of a person. So I spoke to one of the guards and I said, listen, my mother wants to cook some fish and send it to me. You think it's possible? And he said, yes, if I'm working, it's fine. So of course I told her, and she went ahead and made 3 fish and some bread and some bami, a Jamaican thing. And she sent it to me. So it should have gotten there on the Friday, but he wasn't there to receive the package at that day. So it actually came Monday. So by the time it got there Monday, it was a little bit off because it was sitting too long. But I was so happy, they gave me the package. They opened it, of course, to check if there's anything illegal in it. And then they gave it to me, and I went inside and I sat down, and everybody that was there came around, and I was breaking off little pieces and giving it to this person and that person. Yeah, so it reminded me of Jesus feeding the multitude, so it was a great moment in my life, and I will always cherish that moment.
Amen. And Tony, the way that food remained good and fresh was because your mom and your sister had put some vinegar on it. Am I correct?
Yes.
Is that a lesson for people that want to be good cooks and hold on to food for a while?
I mean, it's definitely a process that will allow food to last a couple of days longer, whether it's citric acid or maybe a little vinegar or maybe a little lemon. The more acidic, it's going to keep the food a little longer.
Well, I'm sure you became very popular where you were at in that detention center after feeding the people, I can imagine. But it's a very beautiful part in the book and in your life, and it very much rendezvous and complements the entire story of your life. Now, Tony, I only bring this up because of just our humanity, and not to embarrass you in any way. I cry all the time. And one of my favorite parts, well, I don't know about all the time, but I am capable of tears. And yeah, and we know that Jesus wept, and that tears are the language of the soul. And so Tony Hyde was a guy that was also had to shoot with that bad guy and then carry a gun. And in many respects, you're a gentleman, you're a chef, you're also a tough guy, persevering in the detention center. But you write how when the DOJ lady had come and was listening to you, you felt that for the first time somebody sympathetic was listening. And you write how when you were telling her your story that the tears were coming down your cheeks, right?
Oh, yeah. I broke down. I broke down without a doubt. And I mean, for many, many years after that, I have broken down telling people this story, because even once the book was released and I was able to see the book in my hand and was telling people the story, and this was at a gathering at the restaurant, I broke down in tears because it still felt like that moment, you know?
Yeah.
So it's the remnant of all the things that has happened during that time is still fresh in my memory.
Yeah. But it was the first time that you felt that somebody understood, but this person was more powerful than your persecutors,
Yes, absolutely.
right? And so, okay, so a battle begins. Now you've got the DOJ looking into this. You have an attorney or two, but it's a little bit, I think, of, if I'm correct, in Shawshank Redemption, he was doing some studying of his own, that main character. And so you realized you had to become your own attorney. And you had begun studying, you had begun working, and you started studying the law and reading. And even your attorney was impressed with the work you were doing and how you started to do all of it yourself on many levels, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
If you had not educated yourself and done it all on your own, what might have happened?
I'm sure I would not be here because, the decision was made, and I felt at that point I had to find a way to reverse that decision. And the only way I could have reversed that decision, I had to learn, I had to educate myself to be able to prevail. Because if I didn't, then I have no recourse.
So, look, almost all hope seemed gone. It seemed like a deportation was on the horizon. But all of a sudden, there's this, and I'm just going to say this nice white lady from the DOJ, but why I'm saying that is there weren't some nice white cops that had done this to you. But you have stressed that there was wonderful police of all colors that were coming into your restaurant that you were being friends with. And all of a sudden, some things started now. So there was a bond that was given, and it was $30K. But because of your work and some help from your attorneys and others, you got the news one day that it was reduced to 1,000. And so the gates began to open. Tell us a little bit about this development.
Okay, after or before she actually came to the center to investigate what happened, I had no bond. There was no way of paying a bond to get out. But after we have this conversation, within 2 weeks, I got a letter that I had a 30,000 bond. At that point, I went to the library to do some more research how to reduce the bond. I found necessary paperwork that showed me how to do it, and I filled it out and filed it. So after I filed it with all the reason why I was not able to pay $30,000 within probably another 3 weeks or it could be a month, I received a letter that they have reduced the bond to now $1,000. So at this point, I was overjoyed. I reached out to my mother, and I reached out to another friend of mine by the name of Sybil, and she was able to organize and pay the bond. And not long after that, I was able to walk out of there. And here's the most amazing thing. There was a young lady I met maybe 2 years prior to this happening. And she was a white girl, beautiful, amazing person. So once I was able to pay this bond and get out of there, I was sitting outside on a bench waiting for my mother and sister to come. And this person walked over to me and said, "Aren't you Tony?" And I look at her and I'm saying to her, "Yes, but who are you? How do you know me?" So she said, "I came to your restaurant and asked you for a job before, but you say you didn't have a job at that point, but you would keep my number just in case something came up, you know?" And I was shocked to see that I was gone for all this time. And in the midst of all this, God sent an angel to help me. So after she told me who she was, I remember I got in the car with her and she drove to the store and purchased, I think it was Gatorade and some chips. And we sat there and spoke in her car until my mother and sister came back, you know? So I know God was constantly looking out for me.
Wow, Tony, absolutely amazing. But I want to get back to one point of the book, just an incredible description of a life-turning moment. I'm not saying that this is the same in any way. I'm just saying all of us, I myself, there's been some moments in my life where I just had to get through it. I just had to walk through it. I just, we think of the Psalms, even though I walk through the shadow of death, I fear no evil. Right. And so you had been a total of 11 and a half months you were locked up, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then on that day, when you were walking out and you describe it, and I mean, because there had been a period there and periods there where you were thinking, maybe I'm never going to get out of here. Absolutely. And you write about how you began to walk and your legs were feeling rubbery, but you were trying to stay straight. And one of the fears in your mind while you were walking, but your legs turned to rubber, is you were also imagining, because you had written a letter to the congressman, you had complained to their boss, it was on your mind as well that there might be gunshots to take you out while you were walking. Tell us about that very, I guess we could say, scary moment, but also redemptive moment.
Yes. Yeah, because walking through the doors, once they open it, I didn't know whether I should run, whether I should walk, or whether I should crawl, because I just didn't know if there were going to be some kind of retribution for what, I had complained about. So I had, just fear in my mind that as I step out, I may be shot trying to escape. And, the reason would be like I was trying to escape, so I was not walking out there jollily and just rejoicing. I was walking out, but I was walking out with caution. And once I realized that I was out, one of the first things that I wanted to do is go over and kiss the ground. And that I did, just to prove that I was so grateful to be on the outside and to be able to walk on what's considered as free ground at that point. I wasn't locked up anymore. I wasn't incarcerated. I wasn't going to be able to told what to do and what not to do, what to eat or when to go to sleep. I was now free from whatever had held me captive for 11 and a half months. And I felt good about it.
You make a comment in there that I want to mention here, and I'm always stuck apologizing a little bit. Oh, we don't mean all of it. So your brother Richard brought you out to California after that to try, because you wanted to get back into the restaurant business, so you were checking that out for a minute. Then you even went to England to see what could happen there. You tried that out for a minute, but you write that you learned that England wasn't for you. Because it was cold and the people were even colder. Now, I'll begin by saying that there's lots of nice British people, and of course there is. I'm friends with lots of British people, etc. But I just want to say something honest here, because there's a lot of different cultures. So I'm from a Russian background. So we want to hug, we want to kiss, we want to talk about the state of your soul, and we're also very emotional. And by the way, Tony, one of the reasons you and I are friends, and I have to say that, because I grew up around a lot of Jamaicans, and there's a warmness there, and there's a lot of compatibility with my background, because we're emotional people, we're heartfelt people. And I'm not saying all British people are like this, and we have lots of, but I've had some experiences in our overall that we want to hug and talk with our heart but they're a bit standoffish, right? So, what was your experience as a Jamaican dealing with the English? They were a little bit of
They were a bit like you said, standoffish.
yeah,
I mean, snobbish. When you try to speak to, for instance, I mean, I'm sure here we will have neighbors that we will not even speak to, but me as a perfect stranger visiting England, I remember stepping outside and I would say hi to the neighbors and they would look me dead in the face and walk away. Right. It was it was the weirdest thing.
yeah. No, just interesting different cultures because I have some British friends that also are very honest about these things, and they say that sometimes in certain realms in that culture, the expression of emotion perhaps is not the way they like to do things. Let's just leave it at that. But we love all of our British fans and our audience, and we hope that many British people will still come to Tony's restaurant and buy his book. But Tony, okay, so it keeps getting interesting, and the frightening stuff doesn't go away here. So while you were visiting Cali with your brother Richard, trying to start a new beginning, while you're continuing the legal battle as well to get this deportation order overturned, four border control guards stormed your house in Florida while your mom was there. And if you had been there,
I'm sure I would not be here. I'm sure. Because what it is, they had basically found out that, I was granted a bond. And once they found that out, I guess they decided to take the law into their own hand and try to go to my mother's house to see if I was there. So at 6 o'clock in the morning, they went there, and the minute she opened the door, they ran inside. They look in the closet, they look under the bed. And, when they realized I weren't there, then of course they left. And, I remember when I heard this and I called to speak to the person that was in charge of those divisions, I was almost rudely reprimanded that I was accusing his guys of something that was not true, and I left it at that. And, I never even bothered anymore.
yeah. And it's just interesting, just the devils that come into our life tormenting us, and then all of a sudden the angels come. And I'm also giggling because a little bit because I don't mean to be pushing this theme myself. It's because you are very much writing about love and conquering hate in your book, because it's the day racism walked in my door, and it's a black Jamaican man, chef, coming to America, dealing with these four white police officers that are racist and treating you horribly. But then all of a sudden you're writing about this nice white lady when you get out of jail. And then you're writing about this white guy, this mechanic John,
Oh my God.
that comes out of nowhere and just lends you his Volvo during a crucial time in California. So this is your own spiritual journey of realizing, and you keep saying it, that race has that hate has no race, right? But let me take you to tell us about the mechanic John, because that's another incredible story. It's one little miraculous thing after another.
This man was an angel, and I tell you, I was driving from New York to California in a Volvo. So by the time we got to Nebraska, I remember we pull over at one of the gas station and realized that there was smoke coming from the engine. So we got off the freeway and I went to a mechanic shop. So this was a Friday evening, and the guy said, "Well, unfortunately, he couldn't do anything about this because it's a difficult job." But he pointed us to a transmission shop. So we drove over there. We got there. It was almost closing time. Spoke to the guy. The guy was a perfect angel. He was a white guy, but I'm telling you, he didn't have an ounce of hatred in him. He had nothing but love. He was built with love. He was born with love, and I think he just continued spreading love. So when we showed him the car and we told him the issue we had, he said, "Well, I'll tell you what, I will order the part for you, but it's not going to get here till Monday. As a matter of fact, I'll pick it up on Monday and I'll put it together for you. But what I'll do, I'll give you my truck. You could take it, go to the nearest hotel, spend the night, spend the weekend, and I'll come to get you on Sunday, where my son is going to be playing hockey, and we'll go see the hockey game." And I couldn't believe it. I was totally shocked. So we got the truck, went to the hotel, and sure enough, Sunday morning he was there. He came and picked us up, and we went to see a hockey game. And when Monday came, he received a part for the car. He fixed the car and basically only charged us for the part for the car, you know? So you never hear this, because you always hear about people that's highway robbers that will always overcharge you or take advantage of you. But this guy, he was an angel. He was a gem from God. And I'm truly blessed to have met this person.
And so Tony, this is, this book and your story is just, in many ways, it's all of our stories on some level. And I in no way mean that it's the same. I don't mean that at all. I just mean every person has their battles, and then sometimes there's evil and there's hardship, and the demons torment us, whether it's spiritual or physical. And then all of a sudden, God sends his angels. And in your journey, it's miracle. It's like first it's the hardship, right? First it's that evil, these cops, and then the detention, and then what seems hopeless, and then all of a sudden, bang, 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 bang. Now, all of a sudden now, a writer for the LA Times comes forward and writes a very nice review. And if I'm correct, you're already sat down building it up at this time in California, right?
Absolutely. But back up a little bit.
Okay.
Before I even got this book, before I even got this restaurant, I was working at Whole Foods Market. Okay. Working there for about 6 years, doing research and development. And I remember one day there was an accident with one of their refrigerated case. So I turned around and I developed a bracket, and it was a safety bracket for one of their refrigerated case. So when I showed the guy, which is the manager at that point, or the GM, I showed him what he had. He said, "Okay, well, go ahead and develop it. And if you develop it, we're going to take it." Once I develop it, the main office decided all the stores that had these cases had to have this bracket. And yeah, and behold, once I developed it, it was taken from me, because at this point they claimed that because I work for them, then they own the rights to this bracket. So after this, the young lady that owned the restaurant that I own now, she was attempting to sell it to me. And she offered it to me 3 times. And 3 times I turned it down. I said, no, I didn't want it. After the 4th time, which is right after they went ahead and took the bracket, I told her I'll go ahead and take it. So I took the restaurant with the understanding that everything was going to be in great, perfect working order. But I was definitely wrong. I got in there and almost everything was broken. All the equipment was broken. And I was able to slowly salvage it and struggling to get it going. Then all of a sudden, a woman from LA Times, a white woman, of course, see, another blessing.
I like how we keep mentioning they're white, but no, I hear you. Yeah.
She came in, she ate the food, and she was just overwhelmed with the food. She said it was so amazing. She came back about 2 days later, and she brought 3 more people with her. And they sat down, they ate, they loved the food. Then at that point, she said she would like to do a story on the restaurant.
Wow.
Yeah. So you see, God is moving in such a way that I had no idea what was going on, but it was happening, you know? Everything, and here's the funny thing. The restaurant that I was taken out of in Florida, the color of the interior was white, blue, and orange. Those were the exact colors. When I first walked into this restaurant that I own now, it was the same exact color. White, blue, and orange, the same exact color. Now, if God doesn't move in, ah man, I'm sorry, I'm overwhelmed.
And then you meet Jamie Glazov and you end up on the Glazov Gang. No, okay. That's a no. That I'm just joking around, but absolutely, Tony. And so very overwhelming. Then the review. Then you get you because of that better business, maybe a little bit more money, and then you got this great new immigration lawyer. And so you had to, just like you had to be patient with cooking and marinating, 11 and a half months in jail. Now worrying about the deportation and the judge in Florida that said you had to be deported. But now you got this immigration lawyer. You do your own studying. And then 14 grueling months go by. But you got a call. And she says, are you sitting down? You said, no, I'm standing. She said, that's good, because we got to dance. So what did she tell you?
She told me she finally got the decision, and they grant me a new, basically a new trial. So at this point, I had regained my green card, and everything was now legal. And then the next step, she was going to move to get a citizenship almost immediately.
The Supreme Court of Virginia overturned the ruling of the immigration judge in Florida.
Yes.
Due to your hard work as being your own lawyer and then hiring this great immigration attorney, right?
Absolutely.
But Tony, but then during the next trial where this had to be fought out, the prosecutor is a Jamaican lady. She sees the Jamaican man, and you would think that she would help you. What happened?
Compassion. So, one of the things I said, God has a sense of humor. God has a sense of humor, because I would never imagine in a 100 year that if I have someone that came from the same destination, the same country, we speak the same dialect, would then turn around and try to persecute me, But this was the case. But the attorney was so much more brilliant. She knew exactly what to say and how to say it, and she got the job done,
You write how the Jamaican prosecutor, female woman, turned on you like, quote unquote, a cobra. When you think about that, what do you think?
I don't know exactly what her reasoning was, but
you were shocked.
I was shocked. But I think oftentimes there is a lot of people that's in a position that felt that they have to be harder on the person that came from where they're from, to make other people believe that they're a person that's playing on the right team. No, I think but I think that's basically what it was, Jamie.
Now, I'm sorry, because there's so many landmark watersheds here, so many turning points, but then you had to wait, but then there was another thing, then you had to wait another 15 months. But I think I had already mentioned this. I think I conflated it. The date was July 15th, 2015. Your attorney calls you. She asks you if you're sitting down. You said no. She said good, because it's time to start dancing. And she had informed you that you would not be deported and that the case was thrown out, right?
Right.
Uh-huh. And then, okay. And then after that, tell us about your experience of becoming an American citizen.
It was a beautiful thing because, wow, she filed the paperwork, and I remember when I went to the immigration court here in Chatsworth. I spoke to an officer there, and I tried to tell her what happened in Florida, and she looked at me with shock and said, "That happened here in America? Is that possible?" And I said, "Yes, it happened in Florida." So she couldn't believe it. So, you know, um, I went back and forth to the court here in Chatsworth after the citizenship papers was filed. Eventually, everything was resolved, and then the day of the citizenship, I remember I went down to the Coliseum, I think it is, or the one of those places downtown to be sworn in for the citizenship. And it was just probably 2 or 3 thousand people that was there, and it was a beautiful moment, to just know that I finally became a citizen of this country that I truly love and I truly enjoy being. It was a good thing.
And so, Tony, so you come to America, you had some bad experience in America, to put it lightly. There were some bad Americans in the police department that did some bad things to you, but there were many good people in authority positions. Today you have police officers taking pictures of holding your book. But the system in some ways corrected itself. And you were battling in one way. America treated you, or some people in America treated you badly, but yet you wanted to stay here for a reason. And so you write about this very beautifully, and you mention your belief in Martin Luther King Jr.'s dream, and it's also an American dream, that you did not allow the awful hate and what the devil tries to do to cloud your love of all people and of this country, right?
Absolutely. Because, one of the things I always say to quite a few people, not because there's one apple that's bad on the tree, that means the entire tree needs to be cut down, because things happen. People are energy, and you have great energy and you have some bad energy, you know? So you have to just be able to know when you're going to step away from the bad energy and just enrich yourself with great energy. And that's what I tried to do.
Yeah, amen. Tony, I very sincerely apologize for raising this on the show. I think it's one of the most painful things in your life. I apologize, but there's just such deep things that happened to you and something that you said. So I'm so sorry. Your brother Richard died of liver cancer, and this really I don't even know what words to use, because you described the awful hit that this had done to you. But you write that you were shopping in Costco one day, and you got a sharp pain in your stomach. And then your sister Kate called to tell you that your brother had died. And I mean, Tony, how, I'm so sorry for bringing this up, but you had actually got a very sharp pain when your brother died.
Yeah, it's like I felt the pain at that moment. I remember there's an author, John Assaroff. They wrote a book called The Answer, and they spoke about taking white blood cells from like one side of the country into the other side and attach like a, a true, what do you say, like a meter to it to measure reaction. And they would almost ask certain question, and then the white blood cell thousands of miles away would react. So it's like my brother passing, and I'm feeling the pain of, his transition.
It's amazing. My prayers and our prayers are with your brother and you, Tony.
Thank you. Thank you.
Tony, who were these four devils? Was there ever any justice? Did they get their just desserts, or they just were too powerful and disappeared?
I never wanted to even inquire. I was not looking for revenge. I was not seeking for any kind of justice. I only wanted to basically pick up my life and just keep going.
Mm-hmm.
I decided I was not going to look back. I decided I was not going to even concern myself with what happened or what didn't happen to them, because I felt at this point, karma is real, God is real, and whatever justice has to come to them, it's not going to come from us. It may come from a higher cause. It might come from a higher calling. So when that happened, that's good enough. And if I never find out what happened, if I never hear what happened, I'm fine just knowing that God was able to move me almost parallel to allow me to get back in business and allow me to make a living. So that is my justice at this point.
Yeah, those are golden words, Tony. But these guys are not the best people on the planet. When you were writing this book, now that the book is published, did it perhaps cross your mind that there might be some forces out there that might not be too happy with you telling this story, and that there might be some danger to you?
Well, I do my best to walk with God's grace and mercy every time. Okay. And no matter how good we are, sometimes things happen. So I do my best to just be mindful that I have a higher force, I have a higher calling, I have, a certain protection that will ultimately continue to watch over me. Because if I was protected or was able to go through 11 and a half months somewhat unscathed, emotionally, yes, there's always going to be emotional scars, but if I was able to physically go through it without physical harm, then I know at this point I had to tell the story. And, I just pray that, retributions would not necessarily come in a way that is going to harm me. Whatever else has come at this point, I just hope it's nothing but good, because I feel at this point that I deserve it.
Well, the Bible tells us in some places anyway that vengeance is the Lord's, and a lot of times we leave it to Him. Tony, why did this happen to you?
Well, they say sometimes good things happen to bad people, bad things happen to good people. Or maybe God just wanted to move me from one direction to another, you know? Sometimes when he tell you to move and you don't move, he may move you physically some kind of way, you know? Mm-hmm. So maybe this is the reason. I do my best to always figure out how to, I know this is cliche, but make lemonade out of lemons, you know? So even that was considered lemon at that point. I figured out how to, make it to the best of my ability. So at this point, I feel I'm blessed. I feel that I'm somewhat, successful, and I'm grateful for all of the love and support that anyone bring towards me, whether you're, black or you white, you're Asian, I don't care. Whoever loved me, I love them back.
Tony, what is you write at the end of the book, throughout the book, but at the end you really give a message to people out there that despite the darkness, what might feel impossible in your life, that there's a new dawn beaming. Those are the words you use. That there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and for humans to keep reaching. Tell us a little bit of your message to people out there that, have their own difficulties and their own grief and their own large boulders to carry?
The thing is, as long as you keep fighting, there's always a possibility that you can win. Many years ago, I remember I saw a drawing in New York. It was a fish being swallowed by one of those seagulls. But the fish was in the seagull's mouth, but the fish had his hand around the seagull's neck. So the seagull couldn't actually swallow the fish. So unless you're swallowed all the way, you have to always keep hope. You have to always keep fighting, because nobody can fight your battle but you. And as long as you have a strong belief in God, God will always send an angel or send someone, a guardian angel, that can possibly help you with your fight. But as long as you give up, that means you're just giving into whatever it is that's there. You're accepting it.
Thank you so much, Tony. So profound, and then you have some specific things that you share in terms of some recommendations on how to live life. In one place, you say when a demon strikes you, sometimes you just lay down and let them think that you're dead, and then you can move on. Right? That was a very powerful thing. Why did you write that?
Yeah, because as long as you keep pushing your head up, maybe the force is too much. Okay, maybe you've got 100 people chasing you. It's best to lay down dormant and wait until it's safe for you to get up. And I think I made mention of the fish, the rockfish, that can actually live in the rock for about 5 years until the water returns to certain areas. So sometimes you have to just remain dormant. You have to remain quiet until the time is right for you to overcome whatever obstacle is in front of you.
Absolutely. Tony, we're going to wrap it up. I just wanted to mention perhaps one more thing, because you have so many recommendations after being through so much in your life, and you're quite a philosopher in some ways. I would also say a theologian. But you stress the importance of peace of mind, and it's something that's very much on my mind, just trying to avoid all the negativity. But, the last couple of years especially, when I run into somebody, you know what? If I don't feel good after talking to this person, I don't think I need to talk to them again. And I used to be lazy with that. But now I really, really think, like, if you make me feel good, I'm going to talk to you. If you don't, but you're right. Don't be involved with people who disrupt your serenity. And you really stress that. Let's end with that as well.
Yeah. Peace is golden. Be our brother's keeper. It makes sense.
Yeah. And, well, look, our producer, Annie Cyrus, I think that this story and your story would very much resonate with her. I mean, Annie had been through hell in the country of Iran growing up, so much persecution and abuse, and her story is one very much, I would think, of a miracle. And I don't want to speak too much for Annie, but I don't like a show to go by without Annie's wisdom and input. Annie, what did you think about this discussion and this lovely guest we had today?
Before we started the show, Tony, I said it's a pleasure to meet you. I want to emphasize it is such a blessing and a pleasure to meet you and to hear your story. Jamie is very kind, but I do pray that one day I can reach the level of faith you have to go through what you have gone through and not just survive it and become an overcomer, but to find good within what happened so you can send such a beautiful message out with your book. So I've been just listening and holding on to every word that you guys exchanged. And again, it's definitely an honor to be able to, behind the scene, be part of this episode. I almost want to say, keep up the faith, but I don't think I need to say that to you, Tony, because your faith is so amazingly strong. But I'll say, pray for the rest of us
Yeah.
to achieve that strength that you have and just stay the shining sunlight that you are for our world.
Thank you. Thank you. That means a lot. Thank you.
Thank you for your golden words, Annie. What an honor and privilege to have had you on the show, Tony. Okay, so all of our viewers that are watching and they're on the edge of their seat, they should go and find you on Instagram at Sat Down. Tell the viewers where they can find you.
Sat Down Jamaican Grill. And the book can be purchased on Amazon. The name of the book is The Day Racism Walked in My Door. It can also be purchased on Barnes & Noble, and it can be purchased in my restaurant.
Okay, and if people are in the LA area, they should go to Sat Down Jamaican Restaurant at 11320 Ventura Boulevard, Studio City, California. And even if they're not in the LA area, even if they're in Japan or England or Saudi Arabia, they should get on a plane and fly over and go to Sat Down because in my opinion, you have the best curry goat and oxtail.
Thank you.
But also maybe curry chicken, right?
Absolutely. Curry chicken is amazing.
Okay, final words of wisdom from you under 30 seconds and we'll go get some rest.
We are our brother's keeper. As long as we keep spreading love, love will return. We're going to stumble sometimes in the middle of the road because of bad people, because remember, people is energy. But eventually, we're going to see that good will prevail.
Amen. Tony, you know what? I think you need to be a life coach as well, maybe even a pastor. Tony, honor and privilege to have you on the Glazov Gang. We wish you the best of luck. We love you. Thank you.
Thank you. Much love.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, get Chef Tony Hyde's book, The Day Racism Walked in My Door, and visit his restaurant, Sat Down Jamaican Restaurant on Ventura Boulevard in Studio City. We'll see you soon. Good night.
This is a fan-generated show. If you'd like to support us, please go to jamieglazov.com. Also,